Great, thank you very much. So just a very warm welcome to everyone for the GRC conference here, and thank you to MetricStream for giving me the opportunity to go and speak about MarketAxess and what our journey has been, for the integration of our GRC tools within MarketAxess. Now, on the introduction, you said about, a bit about MarketAxess. I mean, just want to kind of, broaden that a little bit in terms of what we do as a business. So in Europe, being obviously a very highly regulated environment, we operate in the US. The company is headquartered in the US. And in the US, we are one of the leading platforms for electronic trading for the fixed income market for global credit products. In Europe, we've been operating for about 13 years now, and in 2013, MarketAxess acquired a smaller UK entity known as Extractor or Trax, which provides services to the fixed income market for predominantly the post-trade services and the data analytics that we provide. And again, we're one of the market leading service providers. Just to give you an idea, MarketAxess globally, has just over 1.3 billion dollars worth of transactions that they sort of put through the electronic trading platform, represented by over 1,200 institutional investors, broker dealers as well. So just kind of an overview of MarketAxess. One of the things that we as an organization are trying to do is really bring innovation and shape up the sort of global credit market within the electronic trading platform sphere. And we seem to be very innovators in what we do, and hence one of the key things that we've done in order to help us through our strategic objectives within the organization is to look at operational risk management, internal audit, and the whole sort of GRC space, which we started sort of back in about 3.5 years ago. The process has been very, very slow, and again, one of the speakers downstairs earlier on said, this is, more of a marathon rather than a sprint in terms of how you implement and the most effective way of implementing GRC within the organization. A lot of it is, to try and get buy-in from senior management, and in order to identify and understand who we are and what we are as a business, because again, as a growth firm, we've been very quick at, going into the market, really selling, and really kind of almost in a way putting process controls, risk management, etc., sort of behind, and sales was, the biggest focus as we've grown within Europe. And again, as we said, we work in a very highly regulated environment. GRC has become, at the forefront of what we do. Particularly, many of you in the room would know that, particularly within Europe, we now have, various regulatory requirements, heightened regulatory requirements such as MiFID II, SMR, GDPR, etc., etc. So there's many things that really are regulating our environment and what we do as sort of risk professionals. I wanted to talk about a bit about what GRC means within MarketAxess, and within the context of MarketAxess, what we've implemented in the last 3.5 years. One of the key challenges has been really, and again, one of the speakers downstairs was talking about earlier on, is risk appetite. And what is our risk appetite, and what does our risk appetite statement look like? That's been one of our biggest challenges. And the other big challenges within our business has been, the common language and understanding of what risk means really to the different departmental managers and to our overall stakeholders and the board. And what we found initially when we started this journey was that, there was a very huge disconnect between what the management felt and what the senior management felt and what the people on the ground felt as in terms of what risk was and what controls meant to them. And there was this very disparate language between the organization as well. So one of the things that we straight away implemented was, the issues management, the operational risk management tool, and the internal audit tools within MarketAxess. So those are the top ones that we implemented. We're also looking at implementing the IT GRC tool as well going forward. But again, spending a bit of time in terms of what we have implemented, say, from an operational risk management, is the enterprise risk management tool. That has really significantly helped the business understand where the key risks lie within the business, and to have a common, again, what I said earlier on, is a common understanding and a common approach and this common language. This tool has really, again, gone further to help business come together to have this sort of vision and this goal, which is a common goal, which is a common understanding and a common approach. As a result, we now have significant engagement, and I'll talk about some of this on some of the other later slides here as well. But in terms of overall, the MetricStream tool gives us various platforms within the offering, and again, as I say, we've taken kind of the soft approach to try and implement what's more important to us as an organization. Just moving on, again, some of the challenges which I probably just mentioned, but I'll touch on some of these. The key things for us as an organization in terms of challenges has been the people, process, and technology. With the technology, it was more about, management buy-in on technology is very, very difficult, to try and get them to understand what this technology offers us, and how we can build a sustainable risk management tool for our organization. We looked at various tools within the industry, and we found MetricStream to be one of the tools that gives us this integration, this integrated approach, which we've implemented through our audit tools, through our technology tools that we've implemented, as well as the issues management and the metrics that we now provide. So all of it actually seamlessly comes together to give us this sort of holistic global view of what the risks look like within our organization. So in terms of challenges, again, I'll start from the top in terms of the people. Executive management sponsorship has been probably one of the most difficult ones that we faced, and I guess it's probably common for other organizations as well, facing the same, where you're trying to kind of bring a culture of change within the organization, trying to implement something new, something that gives people, it makes more people accountable, almost kind of under the spotlight, is kind of one of the most difficult things we certainly did, especially where we started as an organization which was small. We were maybe back then, 3.5 years ago, we were about 80 people in London. We're now just over 400. So that gives you a kind of a bit of a perspective in terms of the kind of cultural changes that we've had to go from a smaller organization to where we are today, and we're still growing. And then the stakeholder relationships, audit, legal, etc. This gave us more of an approach where we brought different functions of the business together, again, going back to the common language. So now, with the aid of this, we now all speak a common language within the organization in terms of what risk means for us. The governance model I'll talk about in the next slide, but again, the other challenge we had was to get dedicated resource. Dedicated resource in the sense of who's going to own and manage this particular tool for us, and how we implement this going forward, and who manages it, and sort of, again, we speak about continuous improvement programs. So one of the things that we did here is to assign a specific person within with responsibility for managing GRC within the organization related to this, in order to build this continuous improvement program. I spoke about process earlier on. Again, we had very disconnected processes within the organization. A single process meant various different things depending on who you were speaking to, whether you were speaking to a salesperson or whether you were speaking to one of the operational guys. Control process meant very different things. So one of the things we changed, again, as an example of implementing this, was the onboarding process of our clients, and what are the risks and challenges related to sort of the legal aspects, the compliance aspects, things like doing KRI checks, and also sanctions checks, etc. So all of this we actually were able to build in to our processes when we reviewed the end-to-end processes as part of implementing the GRC tool. And now what we do also have is subject matter experts within the business itself in order to kind of discharge the accountability and the ownership on the business in order to manage their own risks as the first line. So again, we implemented the 3 lines of defense model as part of implementing the GRC tool within our organization. Some of the biggest challenges that also we faced was with our information security, being a electronic trading platform, having a lot of proprietary data within our databases, and also the trade data that we hold is very, very sensitive. Our information security teams are very, very aware of, what are the information outputs and inputs into our own technology environment. And again, we had various discussions with MetricStream when we were implementing the tool, and suffice to say, we were able to come to a common agreement in terms of the security arrangements that we have with this tool to be able to build all the metrics and the data on the back of it. Again, just touching on one final point is the customization of the dashboards. Again, one of the challenges was to build customization into the tool. So where you have a sort of canned tool itself, trying to sort of fit it into your organization was, again, one of the key challenges that we faced. But again, the tool is so customizable that we were able to kind of, customize it in a way that fitted our organization and what we actually use it for. Just moving on, this is a very busy slide, but again, I just wanted to kind of demonstrate, the minefield of information and the minefield of processes that we had within the organization, putting it into those 3 lines of defense. And again, we're sort of maturing in this process and this GRC journey, if you like, within our organization, where we initially started off by what I mentioned earlier on, is to understand where risks lies, what the common language is, what the common understanding is. And once we've done that within our own areas of our business, we then moved into this formalizing the 3 lines of defense model within the organization. So again, having key functions, taking ownership and responsibility as first line of their risk, infrastructure, IT development, HR, accounting, finance, sales, etc. All of these departments actually were broken down into end-to-end processes in this implementation phase to putting together a full framework that meant something for the business. It wasn't something that the risk guys were trying to enforce, but it was more of a sort of two-way dialogue in terms of helping the business, again, have full processes that they were able to kind of demonstrate at the time of an audit, for example. One of the other things we did on the back of this is to create various oversight committees. So whilst we had an audit committee, throughout this implementation of the governance framework, we felt that we were very, very light in terms of the last piece of this, which is the oversight and governance aspects within the organization. What this meant is that it gave the board a bit more food for thought in terms of what it means to implement a full GRC program within the business and how that framework is going to look like. So on the back of that, we established various committees of the board, such as a risk management committee, a separate audit committee, which is specifically looks at key risks and challenges within the business, as well as various other governance committees like data sales governance committees, where we look at launching new products. What does that mean from a risk management perspective? All of these things we never really had within the organization before we started this particular GRC journey. So where are we? Where are we on that roadmap? As I said, it's been a very slow, phased approach. So we decided right at the beginning that we were going to fast track some of this for our organization, given the sort of regulatory changes that we were looking at that were coming into our environment. So MiFID II at that time, it was pushed back in terms of its implementation to 2017, but initially, as most of you probably know, that it was going to be implemented a year back. So we kind of took all of that on board and started this journey in order to get ourselves fully compliant with all the regulatory heightened changes. So we use this tool to actually kind of leverage all of that and build various capabilities like the metrics, the compliance, and the ISM tools. We're currently working on implementing the next phase of our GRC journey in terms of putting together the VRM, the internal audit, and the IT GRC metrics. So a couple of takeaways, really. What have we learned as an organization as part of implementing the GRC and having this integrated approach is, the first and foremost is to make better decisions. I mean, what we do now really aligns to our strategy within the business. And again, the board, the management team are fully in line with what the vision is and how we're actually implementing that through these tools. And again, some of the key benefits has been to reduce risk within the organization. I mean, so for example, the business we're in, we have a significant risk in terms of counterparty risk and counterparty exposure for the trades that we sit in the middle. And that the financial aspects of it can be very, very significant. If you think, the smallest trades we do is about, $15 to $20 million. So the risk exposure is extremely high. As part of implementing this tool, we have now a much better understanding in terms of what our risk exposure is for our organization, and therefore we're able to make very, very quick decisions in terms of how to manage that risk exposure. We now have also improved performance, and we are now working a lot more collaboratively with the business. And again, I said earlier on, there's a lot more engagement and a lot more accountability within the business in terms of how we manage our risk and the common understanding and the framework that's been implemented. So there's a significant buy-in now. And we feel when we sit in a meeting now, we all speak the same language. And that was very, very sort of a big gain for us. And then the final one I'm going to touch on here is, the analytics that we're able to provide now. So again, one of the speakers earlier on was talking, which I really resonated with, is the fact that, we were taking reports to the board, which was, 30, 40 pages. And, the board was just disengaged, very, very quickly. What we're able to do now is, from, 30 pages, we now have no more than 4 pages of a deck that goes into our board, and the first one is a risk dashboard, and that gives pretty much all of the key areas of risk that a board is particularly interested in for us to explain, backed up by key metrics. So that's one of the biggest benefits, certainly for my job. It makes it a lot more easier when I'm standing in front of a board trying to explain where the key risks are and where the key changes in our business is coming in from. And there's a fantastic measure on the back of that. Key learnings and best practices. Again, I'm going to talk very quickly. I've mentioned some of those before. People, processes, responsibility, accountability. We've had a phased approach, as I said, starting back a few years. Our fantastic reporting capabilities are now, giving us huge benefits where we have greater engagement with the board and greater visibility within the business. We have better reporting, and overall, I think personally, hand on heart, we're managing our risks much, much better than we did, 3.5 years ago. I know I probably, whizzed through this quite quickly, but happy to take any questions.
Sure. Any questions from the audience?
Yeah, I've got one.
Hi.
I'm amazed, really. On the one hand, there's sophistication and complexity, and yet you've presented us with about 8 slides or 10 slides full of words, full of sentences, full of hard-to-read material, and yet you talk about communication. I've never seen such poor communication in terms of visuals, in terms of impact, and the words that you actually use, where you say, well, when we're in front of clients, we have this huge impact. Well, if that's an example of impact, I'm afraid I'm not very convinced. So I would just give you some feedback.
Sure.
That if in fact you really want to sound impressive about this stuff, you need to change your visuals, because I switched off watching all these words flying in front of me. Mm-hmm. As you said yourself, one of the charts was so complex that it would take me half an hour to really understand it.
Absolutely.
And yet, behind it all is obviously a very intelligent approach, which I'm interested in. But I wanted to express my frustration at the fact that it didn't appear to come across the way that I think you wanted to come across.
Actually, thank you for the feedback, because again, as you say, this is a very, very important area. It's supported by, a lot of understanding and a lot of thought that goes behind it. Again, we're restricted by time, so apologies for the poor visuals, because this is something that MetricStream uses as its, template. So we're kind of, dare to say, following a template. So apologies, if it has been very quick and if it has been very wordy.
I have a question about
Sure.
the entering data to the central depository of the MetricStream tool. What will there is a situation, of course, because you have multiple business units that enter their risks, and it comes to the central deposits. What will be the best way to maintain the same understanding, same way the risks are presented, and the quality of language and integrity of data?
Yeah,
So
thank
what
you.
will be your recommendation, because there is multiple people entering same data in the same tool?
Yeah, I think, you know, what we did is we actually defined a common language. So, you know, between discussing with the business, we used, you know, industry standard approach in terms of having the business come together, you know, to come and work out what a common language would be between them and what it is they find is easy to understand. Again, simplicity is something that we're really big on within the business, to try and, you know, have everybody speak the same language. So simplicity has been the one thing, and the collective discussions between the business units has been very, very key in facilitating this common language. Sorry. Absolutely. So we have you know, very detailed guidelines produced on the back of it, with periodic training for each and every single department, and we don't just restrict it to departmental managers, but we also go one level beyond that. I must say, you know, it absolutely works, you know, and as I said, you know, in some of the key benefits that we've shown here today, is that we've seen that, you know, engagement in the business. So, you know, it has worked.
Just on a practical point, I would assume that you had a level of risk management within your organisation before going on this GRC journey. How easy was it to translate that information, or the risk information you had, into the system?
That was very difficult, I must say. That was very difficult for a number of reasons. You know, the customization that was required was huge, you know, because again, you know, the tool comes in a canned form. We had to relay it back to what it meant for us. So it was very difficult. I mean, we have a lot of calculations on the back of what we measure from an operational risk perspective in terms of the trading activities that we have. So that was the key challenge, you know, in terms of translating that into the tool. So yes, it was very, very difficult.
And can you give me an indication of how long that took you?
I think we spent best part of about a year in terms of doing that. And again, you know, we had specific dedicated resource within the business, so we had 2 people working on this full time.
Okay, thank you.
And another question that goes in the same direction. Beside the design of the software, how would you rate the effort of the operational departments in keeping the records? Because analytics only go along with data available, and operational departments will have an additional effort to track the data, and also the standardization around it. How difficult was it to implement it?
Absolutely. So that was very, very difficult. And again, you know, when we started this journey, we put together a business model, business case, I should say, to the board, outlining some of the costs as well, not only sort of the human costs, but also the financial costs associated with it. So those 2 dedicated resources actually worked with sort of the business integration teams as well, and the technology teams, because there was sort of customization required on our side in terms of the platform and the technology platforms that we operate as well, in order to get that data in a meaningful way that we could then use to put it into the tool to create the metrics on the back of it. So there was quite a significant part pre-implementation, if you like, in order to have the right levels of data.
I think I saw.
Sorry, I think you had a question there.
Yeah, sure, please. Thanks. Thanks. Hi. The slide which you described as complex, I actually found very valuable and informative. Took a little bit of time to read, but I found it very valuable. Couple of points, though, from it. I noticed on your first line of defence there was no mention of the business. There were a lot of what could be described as second line of defence, departments like IT listed there, but no business listed there, or maybe I just didn't
Yeah,
see it.
we put everything into operations to mean business. you know.
Okay,
Yeah,
right, okay,
yeah, from
got
our
it.
perspective.
Okay.
Again, it was that language in the business,
Sure.
you know, because sales was sales, finance was finance, and everything else in between.
Sure.
The business's viewpoint was was operations.
And the second point is that, interestingly, you put internal audit into the second line
Yes,
of defense?
yes, exactly. So this is a big exercise that we have at the moment. So because of the size of the organization, because of where we started from, we are still quite small in terms of a business as well as the department that I'm sort of looking after now. So under MiFID II, that's going to be a game changer for us, you know. So we are actually going through this process at the moment. So internal audit risk was sitting under that line of defense, you know. We are now looking to separate that out for MiFID II compliance.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi. I guess it's a question, how much customization did you need to do with the MetricStream software? And how much support, I don't know if the MetricStream guys want to walk away, but how much support did you get from them during the implementation phase? I mean, you say you had 2 people of your own working on it, but did you have a team supporting you, or 1 or 2 people? So what was your sort of experience, as well as what sort of customization did you need to do?
Yeah, I think we obviously couldn't have done it with the help of MetricStream, and we have, you know, up to now, we have a very, very good level of engagement with MetricStream. We're implementing the VRM tool, the Vendor Risk Management tool, at the moment. Again, you know, we have a dedicated resource or specific account manager from the MetricStream side in order to help us, you know, through the implementation phase and the, you know, process analysis phase as well. So we've had a fantastic engagement from MetricStream. But again, you know, the implementation and the customization you mentioned, how much of it did we actually have to do? We had to do quite a lot of customization from our perspective. I don't know, you know, again, I'll probably speak to others in this room and the attendees today, but our business processes were, in my view, fairly complex. Hence, you know, we had to do the level of customization that we had.
Thanks. So when you use the word customization, do you mean technical customization or configuring? Did you have to develop, you know, lots of new code, or are you just talking about using configuration to tailor it to your process?
A bit of both from the MetricStream side, a bit of both. We had to do sort of from our end, from our technology platforms that we look after and we manage and we own, we had to do a lot of customization in terms of code development to be able to produce the data, which is what I was talking about earlier on. But from the tool perspective, i.e. from MetricStream perspective, you know, they had to do very minimal coding, but more sort of, you know, front-end customization of the tool to give us what we needed and in the form that we wanted it in.
Any other questions from the group?
Yeah, I have a question. My
Sure.
voice is loud enough. Just in terms of adoption, you know, as you went through the different modules there, are there ones that were adopted in different ways or were more easily adopted? You know, what have you kind of learned from that journey in terms of the sequencing for somebody who's just starting out, in terms of what you would go first with? Any lessons on the adoption side?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we adopted the internal audit, the compliance tool first. And again, the reason why we did that was because it gave us an opportunity for us to understand what our risk and what our controls are, and to actually link them to our business processes and create almost that audit universe, if you like. And that's where we started. So then once we developed the other tools, a lot of it actually links back. So from an organization entity level, all the risk and controls actually mirror across the different processes. So they're kind of that integration there. And that really helped us to then implement the metrics that we did. So in terms of managing our key risk indicators on a monthly basis, we monitor all of that every month, you know, to build the risk appetite statement, which we now have. You know, so all of that actually really linked and created that integration for us to come with the end goal. So to answer your question, we started off with the audit compliance tool, and then we went for the metrics afterwards. And that's kind of a natural progression. So now, again, you know, we're implementing VRM now, as I say. So we've done about 3 phases so far in the 3.5 years.
Right. Thank you, Aziz, for that presentation. It was, it really brought together a lot of concepts around integrated GRC, and and especially around the journey that you have had, bringing in multiple aspects of integrated GRC and bringing it together. And you continue to be on that journey. Best of luck with that. And
Thank you.
Thank you for such a great session.
No
Thanks.
worries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.